if you've ever thought about making a phone call to someone, if you've ever thought, oh, you know what, I should ring that person. I'm living proof right now, sat here talking to you, you beautiful souled human being, that if you ever have that thought about ringing someone, just pick up the phone and ring them, because you never know what you're going to do for them on the end of the phone. And if it wasn't for my business partner, I wouldn't be here right now.
You are listening to Personal Development Mastery, the podcast that empowers you with the simple and consistent actions to take that will help you create a life of purpose and fulfillment. I am your host, Agi Keramidas, and this is episode 414. In today's fast-paced world, many of us face overwhelming challenges that test our mental strength and emotional well-being. Whether it's the stress of financial instability, the heartbreak of failed relationships, or the burden of substance abuse, these struggles can leave us feeling isolated and hopeless. Today's episode offers a beacon of hope for those seeking to overcome adversity. Today's episode is about mental health, resilience, and personal growth. You will be moved and inspired by the story of my guest, Peter. But more than that, you will discover practical tools for mental well-being. These tools could save someone's life. Before we dive in, if you enjoy listening and appreciate what we're doing here, the quick, simple favor I'm asking of you is to click the subscribe button. Now let's get started. Today it is my real pleasure to speak with Peter John Mather. Peter, you are a celebrated skydiver, a mental health advocate, and transformational speaker. You battled with substance abuse and low self-esteem from a young age, even suffering a heart attack at 21 due to a cocaine overdose. Skydiving became your lifeline, leading you to represent Great Britain and win national championships. You are passionate to share your story, to inspire and help others, showing that change is possible and life is for living. Peter, welcome to the show. It's such a real joy to speak with you today.
Thank you very much for the intro. That was beautiful. Thank you very much for having me on the show.
It's my real pleasure, and let me start. I think we have to start this conversation by sharing how we know each other. So maybe I'll let you share how we know each other, and then I'll share quickly my point of view, and then we can move on. But I think it is important because it sets, I think, a very nice preface to everything that we're going to speak afterwards.
Yes. So we met, and mine will be very different to yours, Aggie, as well, how we met. But we met at Birmingham, the UK, and it was for a Tony Robbins event, which was UPW in July of 2023. And that was my first event there for work, volunteering for Tony, which was a fantastic event. And I remember meeting yourself. And the thing that stood out for me with you was that when we did the magic moments at the end, which was, where everybody stands up. And I remember you talked about this when Bill was on your show as well. It was just you were just so beautifully put about how you wanted to share different things on your podcast. And that's what, that's one of the big things that reminded me. I know the thing that I remind you of is very different to that. And I want you, I want you to share that with everybody right now, please, because that really made me laugh when you told me this.
Yes, sure. I do remember you as the loud guy of the fire team, who were the group of us, the volunteers that were responsible for creating the fire and the coals for the fireworks. So I do remember your voice was heard from everywhere around the room. So that's how, it was my first, impression of you. And here we are, almost 10 months after that, and we're going to have a conversation on the podcast about. I think it's going to be quite different, but I suppose at some point the fire team and Tony Robbins volunteer and then the crewing might come up. So we'll see how it goes. But the main, let's say, topic that I want to discuss with you, and I know that this is what you also want to share and make a difference, is about mental health.
Mm-hmm.
Is about things that not everyone is familiar with or talks about openly. And what I would like to start with, Peter, is your story in particular. There was that period in 2020, just before COVID started, that I realized that you had some immense challenges that happened that led, but I don't want to share the story myself, so please take us back to that time. Where were you, so that then we can see what led to the the low points that happened.
I think I want to touch on something that you mentioned earlier as well, that for 18 years I was a substance abuse addict.
Okay.
Why I say substance abuse addict is because I did abuse alcohol and I did abuse drugs at the time. Cocaine especially was the drug that I really abused. And you are correct. At the age 21, I did have a heart attack and they brought me back to life. And you would have thought that would have stopped me from doing anything else like that. But unfortunately, I didn't know how to deal with my mental health issues at that time, self-esteem being a big one. And again, a limiting belief of that I'm not enough. That was what I did for a very, very long time. Mm-hmm. And I think it became apparent more when I bought a skydiving center. So I'm a person that is very driven in growth. I didn't really know it until I started doing stuff with Tony and stuff like that as well. And it will come up in the comments. But I decided to buy a drop zone, a skydiving center, which was an aeroplane with 27 members of staff with 186 acres of land with it. And I was going to go into business with 3 other human beings, which are my business partners still to this day. And that was, I remember the day, I'll never forget. It was a beautiful day that I was actually in the Caribbean on a beautiful boat. And the solicitors were dealing with all the stuff with the 3 other business partners back in the UK. And I'll never forget the day. It was a stunning day. I was looking out on the boat, and you know when you've had them days that are absolutely beautiful. And I'm on a Zoom call kind of thing as well, looking out to sea. And I watched the solicitor and everything sign like the paperwork to say we now own this amazing business that we were going to transform, and it was going to be beautiful. And I was like, yes, like we just completed something that someone actually told me that I would never do. And that was kind of like the one thing that gave me the drive and the motivation to get to that point. And then 3 days later, or actually it was not even 3 days, 2 days later, that's when COVID struck. And that's when the whole world started to kind of shut down. And I was in the Caribbean. I was in Grenada at the time. And all of the Caribbean started to shut down. So I ended up flying out to Miami. And that was kind of an eye-opener for me there, because the whole of Miami, if you've ever been to Miami, like it's a busy, busy city, right? And we got off the plane and there was nobody around. So that was a realization that, hey, something is going on massively. And at that point, I'll be honest with you, I was kind of like, this will brush over it. So it's just the kind of
that's what we all thought. A couple of weeks. Yeah.
If that, and the guys back in the UK were saying to me, hey, what's happening? So I said, I'm getting the flight home, next flight home. I knew there was something going on, but I said, we're coming home. So we got back to London and we got up to the northwest where I live near Manchester. And at that moment then I was kind of like, well, they're not going to shut us down because, like no one really knows what this is, we'll just stay open. We'll stay open. We arrived, never forget this. We arrived back in the northwest of England near Manchester on the Saturday. And then I went up to the new skydiving center, which I'd just bought with my 3 other business partners on the Sunday. And we operated for 1 day, realistically, of owning the business where it was open. And then on the Monday, they shut the whole country down.
Wow.
So we literally had just invested all this money into this business, and we didn't even know where the money was going to come from after that. And that was the moment that I reverted back to, like, holy shit, what are we going to do? We just took on humongous amounts of financial kind of money from people and the banks, and we didn't even know where our next penny was coming from, never mind how we were going to pay for the staff, never mind how we were going to pay for the aircraft, how we were going to pay for the mortgages. I really didn't have a clue. And my job in the company is, that's my job. Like, I am the finance guy. That's what I have to do. I'm the person that finds these ways and these avenues of how to create and get money out of, from nowhere, really, sometimes. So that was the first time that I really felt kind of like I don't know what to do. And again, that was one of the things that I went back to my out of control kind of self. And I think you can understand, and a lot of people out there who are listening probably can understand, that when something becomes out of our control, we don't understand it. So I just reverted back to right, okay, so now I'm going to go back to the drugs and the alcohol. And I didn't really go back to the alcohol, but I did go heavily on the drugs. And this was at the beginning of COVID, and it was a pretty, no, let's be honest, it was a really hard time at that point. I didn't know what was going on, and I had a partner at the time who she didn't really know what was going on either, and that relationship got really on the rocks, and then we got going again in business. And then it really kind of snowballed from there, where I just didn't really know whether I was coming or going. And the biggest thing I'm going to say is that I didn't talk about it. Like, I really didn't talk about it. And then it got to a point where I own some other businesses as well. I'm very grateful and honored, and that I do have other avenues in life with business, and I'm very driven in what I do. And there was a moment where in one of my other businesses that it got too much with the drugs. And I was like, okay, I must change. My partner at the time had left me. And I remember saying to myself, I don't know whatever I do right now, but if I don't continue, I'm going to die. I'm going to die very, very quick, because this is getting to a point where it was ridiculous. It was every single day,
Were you afraid you'll have another heart attack like you had?
There was many times, I'll be honest with you, where I went to sleep and I didn't think I was going to wake up.
Right.
Many a times. Like, if we're open and transparent about this, I was taking that many drugs. At one point, I was having to take 50 milligrams of Valium to get to sleep. But right at the end, right at the end, where things got really bad, and this was right at the end of 2020. This was like the second lockdown, 5th of November. I have some other businesses in the firework game. And at that point, the girlfriend at the time had left me. And that's when I started hitting the drink again as well. So I was now doing all of it. And I was getting people to drive me around. I never drove. And, and some people knew about it. Some people didn't know about it. They just didn't know what to do. And at that point, like I say, it got to a point where I decided that I must stop. And at that point, then
Can you take us to that decisive moment, or that turning point? Was that whatever that?
So the turning point of that moment was I was stood in my shop, and at that point, it was the 5th of November. It was the second lockdown in the UK, and the police were trying to close me down. And one of the things that I'm very good at is I find the rules and the regulations and the laws, and when they came in, there was 6 of them in the shop, 3 of them in riot gear and 3 of them not. And I stood there and I was like, and at that point, I'll be honest, I'd had some cocaine, right? And there was a moment then when I looked and I was like, if I don't change right now, I'm not only going to lose my partner at the time, which she'd already left, I'm also going to lose my business. I'm also going to lose my other businesses. And I'm also going to lose my family, which will be my mum and my dad. And I'm also going to lose everything that I've worked for that hard for this one thing, this one drug, that one drug. And I'll be honest with you, this is the first time I've told that moment on either TV or a podcast or anything. So thank you for bringing that up. And I remember looking at this police officer and all these other police officers in the shop, and I was like, okay, if this is a sign. So this is the sign, is to stop right now. Like, because you're going to lose everything. Like, my life at that moment would look really pretty on the outside and really cool, but inside I was dying. And when people say they hit rock bottom, like, that was a moment where I thought I hit rock bottom, which gave me the energy to shift a little bit. And that little bit of shift was enough to say, okay, enough's enough at that point. And then from there, once that had finished, I then actually traveled to Portugal. When I drove to Portugal, I listened to a book, and one of the books, it was the first ever book I'd ever listened to, Aggie, right? And it was called The Secret, The Law of Attraction, The Secret, right? And I listened to it all the way there, and I was like, sweet, boom, I'm going to change my life. I'm like, yep, law of attraction. So I'm doing the whole law of attraction all the way there, and I'm like, yep. And I'm like, this is the new step. And at that moment, it was tough. It's tough. I'm coming off drugs. And I've just been through a traumatic time. And then that's when it became really tough, because that's when I really realized at that moment that you have this inner thing that's past your mind, which is called your heart. And that's where my heart got broken. I remember getting some flowers for her. And, when you've been, when you're in a moment where you're excited to see someone, and you can understand that the excitement is, yes, I'm doing really well. I've stopped the drugs. I'm doing this, I'm doing that,
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden she decided that she couldn't cope with what we'd been through. And I totally understand that. And, you must know someone that's been to that place, if not yourself, and people out there listening, you can understand where I can understand from her point of view 100%. And I'll never forget where I was. I was on a beach and in Portugal, and it was beautiful blue skies, and it was, beautiful smell from the beach was just coming up, and I could really smell the sea air, and I could feel the sand in my toes. And it was just like, it was just a moment of like beautifulness. And I was so happy at that point that I was making these changes. And then all of a sudden she just looked at me and cried and said, I'm sorry, I can't be with you no more. And it was like someone had just ripped open my heart completely into two different pieces. And it was the same moment in realistic terms, except it was a different emotion, but it was the same feeling as when we got shut down in COVID. And at that moment, then it was like, what do I do?
So how did you handle that? I was about to ask you that.
This is where, at that moment, the tears are running down my face. The emotion is really strong. My heart feels like it's been ripped open. The whole kind of my everything is literally outside of me. And the one thing I did was this. I just walked back up to the top, and I stood on the edge of a cliff, and I said, fuck it. What's the point in living? And at that moment, there was something that came over me that said, You know what? You know, if you're going to do it properly, Peter, be a man and take the car with you. Take the car with you. If you're going to go, don't jump off the cliff. You know, get in the car and race the car at the cliff and take the car straight off the cliff. So I got back in the car and I said, okay, fine. And I did the law of attraction and I visualized me driving off the cliff and I visualized the car leaving. And I said, okay, now's the time. I don't need to say bye to anybody, but enough's enough. I've had enough. I'm in £2.7 million worth of debt. I still don't know where the money's coming for COVID. Business isn't great because COVID, we're not fully open. We're now in another lockdown. And these are all the things that were going through my mind. Like everything was going through my mind. Like, you know, I've lost the love of my life. By the way, that was what I thought at the time. And she was a big part of my life. So I had all this stuff going through my head and in my heart. There was just nothing. It was dead. Like it was like I'd had another heart attack. So I decided, right, cool. And I'm saying this law of attraction shit didn't work, did it? So now I'm getting angry. So now I'm going through the other emotion of getting angry. So I start the car up and I drive the car to the cliff. And as I'm driving to the cliff, the phone rings, right? And on the car, you know, on the car, you have a red or a green button to say yes or no to answer. And it says accept or decline. And for some reason, I pressed the green button. And the question I ask myself even to this day is, you know, in life, you always have a choice whether you pick the red button or whether you pick the green button. And at that moment in time, I picked the green button, which was a choice of mine, whether it was subconscious, conscious, or it was my soul, or it was guided or whatever. I pushed that green button and it was my business partner on the end of the phone. And all he said to me was, all right, big man, how you doing? And that was it. I just stopped the car, broke down and started to cry. And then from that moment there, I knew at that moment that my life was worth living because somebody who I hadn't even spoke to for like a month because I'd been so busy with the fireworks and I don't speak to my business partners. For some reason, he had called me for no reason at all. So the reason, and he didn't know on the day, I didn't tell him on the day, but he still didn't know for a good 6 months until we did a BBC documentary together that he was the one that saved my life. And at that moment in present, at that time, I was like, wow, he had no reason to call me and he did. So that was a massive sign to me. And then I said to myself, Aggie, right? I said, well, that law of attraction stuff does really work, doesn't it? And that is how the story of that is how the start of my real journey began. Like that is how I got to that point. And the journey of how I've come out to that is just even more phenomenal because sometimes in life we have to go to these places where I can promise you that was the darkest point in my entire life. Like even darker than being when I had the heart attack at 21, because at that point I was actually having fun and that went wrong at that point. And from there, I then went on to trying to understand personal development and how I was going to come out of this mindset of not being enough, not loving enough, not being cared for, not loving. And the one thing that I realized from that phone call is if you've ever thought about making a phone call to someone, if you've ever thought, oh, you know what, I should ring that person. I'm living proof right now, sat here talking to you, you beautiful souled human being, that if you ever have that thought about ringing someone, just pick up the phone and ring them because you never know what you're going to do for them on the end of the phone. And if it wasn't for my business partner, I wouldn't be here right now.
If you enjoy this episode, can you think of one person that would find it useful and share it with them? I'd really appreciate it. It helps the show grow and you will also be adding value to people you care about. Thank you. And now let's get back to the episode. First of all, thank you for sharing what you just did in the way that you did. I mean, you got me emotional, as as you can see with this. And also for this very important thing you said, if someone comes to your mind, think to call him, give them a call. You never know what that phone call might do. And the question that came to my mind, because you obviously had reached a really, you said rock bottom, a really low point. I mean, I don't know, you were very close, I can imagine, a few seconds probably away from jumping through the
About
cliff.
30 seconds from dying, to be
Yeah,
brutally honest.
so it's terribly close. And there are two questions. I will ask them one at a time because they are, I think, important. The first one is, how can someone, let's say someone listening to now,
Hmm.
because obviously if you reach that point and you are 30 seconds before dying, or you are, I had heard of story of someone who was about to pull the trigger on his head
Hmm.
and the dog came in at that time. So, something similar. But if that happens, then of course you see things very differently in life. But
Yeah.
how can someone not go there in the first place? Because I can imagine that there is a previous stage that you can still turn things around without having to reach 30 seconds from taking your own life.
Yes, 100%. I mean, and these are the things that I talk about now, and these are the clients that I coach right now about the, change is possible. That was the one thing that I always thought was never possible. I always said, "Oh, this is me. This is just the way I am. I'm this person." And that was just a persona that I give myself and a program I'd give myself, and that was my decision and my choice. And the one big thing that I would say is that the biggest change that I have made in my life right now is that I am very, very open about who I am. Like, I am very open about if I have a problem or if I have a situation in life,
Hmm.
then I speak about it.
Hmm.
I have a mentor. I have a beautiful new wife to be, by the way, who I speak to, and we're very,
Congratulations.
thank you very much. We're very super happy, but we have a great relationship about talking. And as a man, as a male, with a masculine energy, is we're told not to speak up, which is
Hmm.
probably, it is the worst thing that you can do. And for me, the way I changed was I just started speaking about it. Like, when people said to me, "Oh, do you want to drink or do you want to do this?" I'd say, "No, sorry, I'm an ex-alcoholic." And I still say to that today, I'm an ex-drug addict. I've been clean for over 3.5 years now. Thank you very much. And it's all about the mindset of the way we talk to ourselves, the way we speak to other people, and the way we open up. And the one big thing to any listener out there right now that's listening to this, and please take this, is if you have any problems at all, anything at all, it doesn't really matter what it is, the quicker we get it out of our brains, the easier it is to deal with, because we don't procrastinate over it. We don't bury it. We don't get on top of us. We don't let it
Hmm.
get heavy. And, it's about understanding them things. And that's the biggest tip biggest guidance I can give anybody, is that as soon as you're feeling unhappy, talk. We don't need to take drugs. We don't need antidepressants. We don't need anything like this. It's just talk. Like, go to some random person and talk. And I'll tell you just a quick one for you. What I love to do, what I absolutely love to do, really love to do this, is I go to the supermarket and I say to someone, "Hey, how are you doing today?" And they go, "Well, I'm not having the best of days." I go, "Hey, do you want to talk about it? Like, do you want to talk about it? Do you just want to talk about it?" And they go, "Well, no." And I go, "Hey, come on. Tell me how bad your day's been." So then they tell me what has been on the problem. And then I, from there, move them and shift them to what's been great about your day,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
thinking about what's been great about your day, how to look at the shit situation and what's the good in the shit situation. And I know that was a long-winded way of saying just talk, but I wanted to give a little bit more context to that. And it's very easy for me to just say talk, right? But as a male, we have to understand that it's okay to like, just go and talk. And by the way, I'll offer this service straight out there. If anybody out there is listening to this and they just want to drop me a message, DM me, find me on Instagram, find me on Facebook, whatever you want, just DM me saying you need a little bit of talk or help. Hey, I'll be on the phone and whatever. We'll talk for 20, 30 minutes, whatever you want, longer you want it to be.
Peter, thank you. I appreciate both what you just said and also the, talk, speak up, don't keep it inside. And absolutely, I will, as a man myself, I know very well the difficulty that comes many times with being vulnerable and sharing something that troubles us, because we have this kind of programming that we can sort it out ourselves, and it's not okay to show weakness and things like that. And just sharing it, and it makes a huge difference. I can certainly relate, and I've had my dark periods, so it's not something that I am not familiar with. And speaking, indeed, you feel, that's how I feel, Peter. Tell me if that feels also for you, like a weight has been lifted immediately. I feel when I speak about something,
Always
lighter. I feel
always.
Yeah.
And you're so right. We're programmed to be this whole kind of, our program for being, our masculine energy is programmed to be fixers. We are fixers. As human beings, as males, we are fixers, right?
Yeah.
But understandably, we also have a part of our body which have as feminine energy, which when you tap into, and by the way, you're beautifully doing that as well. And I love tapping into my feminine energy, because women with their feminine energy are designed to talk, right? They're designed to talk about their issues and the problems. And the reason why there is, I don't quote me on this stat, but I think it's something like 38% more males commit suicide in the UK and maybe in the US is because they don't know how to talk, and that's one of the big things. And the other tip, if people don't want to talk to other human beings, by the way, I'll give you one more little kind of thing, and then we'll move on to the next question. Is everybody has one of these things? Yeah, we all have one of these. Right? It's called a mobile phone.
Yes.
Yeah, a phone, right? We live by that
probably
phone.
on us as well. Most people would probably have them on their body right now. Yes.
Yes. And that is the best. And you know what? It's a beautiful by the way, it's an awful tool in a way, but it's a beautiful tool in a way.
Yes. A blessing and a curse.
Yes. And we have one thing on there. We have one beautiful thing on there that I really use now and then when I get to a point where I can't ring anybody or I really feel frustrated. And it's called a voice recorder, right? It's called a voice recorder. And this is a tip for everybody out there. This is guidance on it. Get that recorder, push the button and say these words. Hi, Peter. And I do this a lot, by the way, and I'll share a little story with you if you don't mind in a second, and say whatever is on your mind, get it off your mind. I'm really annoyed at this. Oh my God, that driver just cut me up. Pull over and say it to yourself. Or, oh my God, my business partner or my work colleague has done this, or my wife, or whatever. Just whatever it is that is getting on your shoulders, or whatever worry you've got about finances or health or whatever, just say it into the voice recorder. Rant at the voice recorder, but also start with your name. Hey, Peter, I want you to know this, right? And I'll tell you a little story quickly, Aggie, if you don't mind, about how I decided to marry my wife to be, right? So she asked me to marry her, and I was driving up to the skydiving center and I had this conversation with myself. And do you remember Tim Schofield?
Yes.
From Fire Team?
I remember Tim, yes.
He is an amazing human being soul, really is. And he is one of my dear friends that I have had the real pleasure to really get to know from Fire Team, the same as you. And I was driving up there before going on to a call with him. And I said these words to myself, and this is another way of doing this whole talking. I said, hey, Peter, how you doing? I said, yeah, not too bad today, Peter. I'm amazing, actually. How are you? And I go, yeah, well, we have a question to ask ourselves. And I go, yeah, Peter, what is that question? And I go, Ash has asked you to marry her. And I say, yeah, I know that, Peter. Well, why have you not said yes yet, Peter? And I say, well, okay, Peter, this is the thing is I am on a question with myself about, should I marry her or should I not? And I say, okay, Peter, I have a question for you. And I said, okay, what is the question? And I said, why would you not marry her? And I said, oh my God, Peter, that is an amazing question. Now, Aggie, a lot of people out there may think this is absolutely bonkers of what I am saying to myself, but it is a way of talking and communicating to your soul. And it is a way of getting out of your head and getting into your heart. And it is a great tool that Mr. Tim Schofield taught me, by the way. And I wanted to share that with you just in case people don't feel like they can talk. Well, talk to yourself. Nothing wrong with it.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that, and even with having the image of someone speaking to themselves in a car. It's something that I think it's easy. It's easy to do. It just needs a decision to do it. Peter, there was one other thing that I wanted to get your thoughts about, and that was, I see you from how we have met. I perceive you as a very, vibrant, energetic, loving life person, and I think that the loud also comes, with that. What I want to understand is what changed, or what element of that love for life that you have right now. What happened that day on the cliff that you didn't have that before, and something shifted, and you love life in the way that you do? Is there what I'm trying to figure out is whether there was some kind of mindset shift or some knowing of, wow, life truly is worth living despite, whatever is happening.
I think I'll answer that. And yes, there was a moment. And I think everybody in life, every human being out there, right, is, Tony talks about the 6 human needs, right? Mm. And one of the human needs that every human being in the world wants is love and connection. Everybody wants love and connection, right? And at that moment when the phone rung and I pressed the green button, that was love and connection. That showed me that people love me. But before that moment, I didn't feel loved. But the biggest moment is I didn't love myself. And I didn't think life loved me. And I didn't love life at that moment. And before that moment, I didn't love life. And the whole kind of concept about the mindset change and the mindset shift was that it came to me and dawned on me. And it was like, holy shit balls. Like, wow, there is worth something living. And the whole reason I'm here is because I am loved, and there is a purpose of me being here on this planet. And I don't know what that, at that moment, I was like, I don't know what that purpose is, but I'm going to find that purpose.
It's a big topic indeed, for sure.
Peter,
I'm going to start wrapping this up. It's really a fascinating conversation. There are 2 quick questions I always ask my guests. The first one is, what does personal development mean to you?
Life.
You were just talking about it, so life. It's interesting. Yeah.
Life. It means life. It literally means, I haven't got anything more to say than life. Like personal development, everything on this planet, if it's not growing, it's dying. So personal development is about what is inside of me and how do I become the best human being that I possibly can be, so that I can be the best human being for you and your listeners and my wife to be and my business partners and my mum and my dad and everybody that surrounds me, person just walking past me. So personal development means life in a nutshell. But a broader way of saying it is that it means that I must be the best human being that I can be for myself and everybody else around me.
That's great. And one hypothetical question. If you could go back in time and meet your 18-year-old self, what's one piece of advice you would give him?
That is a very difficult one. That is a very difficult one. And what would I say to my 18-year-old self? And by the way, that's a real critical age you said that at as well, because that is when I actually started drinking and taking drugs, actually. What would I say? Think about the people that you hang around with, because your environment creates everything and proximity is power. And that would be the one big thing I would say, because as much as it was me that created that, it was a very much an environmental thing as well. And I would probably follow up by saying, it's okay to cry, it's okay to talk, and it's okay to not be okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Peter, where will you direct the people listening that want to connect with you?
So right now I'm getting a website built, which is peterjohnmather.co.uk and .com.
Okay.
And then we have Instagram, which is Peter John Mather 1984. And then you have Peter John Mather on Facebook, and you can connect me through there if you would like. And yeah, it's been a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you so much for your time. And I've really enjoyed being on this podcast. Thank you very much. And I want to say one thing. I am so proud of you for hitting over 400 podcasts in the years that you have been doing. And thank you very much. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for saying what you said at the debrief at Fire Team, that you are a podcast specialist. And if you need any help, or you want to be on podcasts, or you want to create your own podcast, please get in contact, because if you hadn't have said them words, I wouldn't be sat here. So I want to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you very much.
You're very welcome. It is, my path in life and my mission, and it is expressed through the podcast. Peter, I want to thank you also from my heart for this conversation. I really enjoyed it, and I think there was a very important message or messages that came through. Wishing you all the best with your personal life and your professional life, your career, your business. I will give it to you for some actionable, preferably parting wisdom, Peter.
Wow, that again is a difficult one. You like chucking these difficult questions at people, don't you? My part.
I'm sure you can handle it. But let's say I will ask it in a different way. Maybe that will make it more clear for you. Let's say someone now has listened to the full conversation between you and I. What's the last thing you would say to him? Let's assume it is a guy.
Okay, we will do that. This is broadened, but everybody in this life has a purpose. We may not know what it is right now, but the purpose will become apparent when it shows its face. And to always understand that even when you feel like you're not on the right path, that you are actually on the right path. And to be guided by the way you feel and your heart is the most important. To keep on pushing, keep on driving, keep on being motivated and growing is so key to life. The beautiful gift that we have been given every morning just to wake up is so special to all of us. And just respect that gift that we have been given.
And before I end today's episode, if you enjoy this podcast, can you think of one person that would find it useful and share it with them? I'd really appreciate it. It helps the show grow, and you also add value to people you care about. Thank you. And until next time, stand out, don't fit in,